What is going on, Sabres fans, and welcome to another episode of the Sabres Spotlight podcast, where we shine a light on all things Sabres hockey. Ryan, what's going on, man?
It's been a while, dude. It's been quite a while, but I'm doing all right. How are you doing, man?
It has been a while. I don't even remember when the last time that we recorded was, because there's been a lot of shit going on. I've been switching jobs over the last like 6 weeks. You got the little one, so there's a lot of adjustments going on. So we haven't had time, but we've been just as plugged into the Sabres as we always have been, and talking and chatting. And tonight we're signing on for some big news. But I was a little nervous doing that intro. I was like, man, I haven't done this intro in a while. I got to remember what the hell I'm saying.
Oh, dude, I know. Like, it is just so funny because we went from recording like once a week, for a long time to having a long hiatus because of the depression that we had over the Sabres, and now we're back because we finally got some good news to talk about. You know?
Yeah, and so we'll start with that, kind of hopping right into the hiring of Sabres' new advisor to the GM in Jarmo Kekalainen. And you called me as soon as the news broke. And I know when you call me, it's either one of two things. There's either an emergency going on, or there's some important Sabres news, and that's what it was. So I guess give me just like your thoughts on like initial thoughts, and like what do you think this kind of means for the team this offseason and kind of going forward with Adams and two. Just what's your initial reaction?
Well, I gotta say, I've been just so annoyed the last couple of months because as the playoffs have gone on and the Sabres haven't done anything besides hire Eric Stahl to be like assistant to the general manager, we've done nothing. So I'm gladly wrong. Because I've been telling you like for months, I'm like, they're not doing anything. Like they're going to run it back with the same crew. Nothing's changing, nothing's different. And then they go out and hire Yarmo, who was a GM for 11 seasons with Columbus, had multiple playoff appearances, built that Columbus team that took down the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2019 in a sweep. And that Tampa Bay Lightning team was unbelievable and would go on to win a couple cups like a couple years later. So this guy's got pedigree. He's respected around the league, and I'm happy. I'm happy that the Sabres finally hired someone competent.
It's just nice to see some life, like you said, because I think the season went the way it went, and everybody was kind of waiting. Afterwards, we got all the press conferences from the players and from Kevin Adams and Lindy, and Kevin Adams' demeanor during that end of season press conference wasn't necessarily somebody who was speaking from a lot of like confidence. He hadn't At that time he hadn't had his discussions with Terry yet, and so there was still a lot of speculation on will he even be back, and some of the answers that he had to some of the questions from the media were also not very direct or pointed, and made it seem like he was unsure about his status within the organization as well. And so with all of that going on, initially when that season came to a close, you're like, okay, is something going to happen? And then it just never happened. And then after 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, you just kind of realize if it was going to happen already, it would have happened, because Terry and Adams apparently talk all the time. So yeah, it was disappointing because then on top of that, add into that, like you mentioned, no assistant coaches. There's no turnover, whatsoever, minus what I think like a strength coach. Like, okay,
Yeah,
whatever. And so you're just kind of left thinking like what a lot of us were thinking during the season, like what's going on here? Is there a pulse in this organization? And then little minor Eric Stahl news, like, okay, whatever. Don't really care too much about that, but we can kind of see where that goes. And it was at least a little something. But then this is definitely bigger news, and he's an advisor to Kevin Adams, and we'll kind of get more about that role, I'm sure, kind of as it goes on. But it is
yeah,
exciting. It is exciting, at least like you said, having someone who's kind of been there and done that from a managerial standpoint.
yeah. I mean, if you saw the press release, or maybe it wasn't something the team put out, but Adams himself, like through the team, said that Kekalainen will be involved in all facets of the hockey department. So he's our overseer, and they could have done worse here. That's the thing. Like they could have done worse, or they could have done nothing at all. So I'm pretty happy. I like his resume. Um, he also, dude, he got Johnny Gaudreau. Rest in peace, Johnny Hockey. But he got Johnny Gaudreau to sign an 8-year contract in Columbus, and no one saw that coming a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy somehow knows how to get guys there. He swings his balls around, dude. Like he traded Seth
So this is
Jones.
going to be my question. You're kind of answering this right
Yeah,
now
yeah.
because you know a little bit more. But what do you think he is going to bring like to the org? Like, where do you see him like really helping out with some of
You know,
the decisions?
you know how like we've pretty much said before that we don't mind Kevin Adams. I think Kevin Adams is an average GM, like at best, currently. Um,
Below average.
but
Definitely below average. But like
but he
he
could
has
do
done
more.
some good.
I mean,
Like
yeah,
yes.
like he's done some good, some bad. But Jarmo might be over his shoulder and be like, "Don't be afraid to like make that deal. Like, don't be afraid to pull the trigger." Like Adams has made good trades, but I think with
Mm-hmm.
Yarmo in his
Yeah.
corner, it might cause them to be a little bit more aggressive. Like this is an aggressive guy, very very tough on people. He's got a reputation as like a bit of a hard ass. So, with all the Lou Lamoriello rumors that were swirling a couple weeks ago, like this is like right out of the Lou Lamoriello book of like old school hockey guy.
I was definitely. I mean, if bringing Lou in would have been like something at least,
Because
but
he's a legend, yeah.
yeah, but this hiring I'm a little bit more positive on. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't really know this was in talks. I mean, and why would I? Like I have no inside scoops, but like this kind of came out of nowhere. Like there was the whole like, oh, Lou was at the airport, like you said, all these things, and I didn't really hear a lot of like wind about like Yarmo, maybe coming here. And when he got fired from Columbus, we both kind of talked about it at that moment in time on the pod too, of like how he had some success there, and like is this a guy that the Sabres could look at? And I was always kind of in favor of that, and so having him here now is yeah, it's nice. So we'll see ultimately what comes of it, but it's at least something that we can kind of look at and say, all right, the Sabres are kind of shuffling some things up, and maybe he can help with some of the things here. What do you think happened in Columbus? Like, where do you think his time was just up there, or they obviously had a struggle? Not last season. They actually did fairly good last season. Came up a little short in the wild card race there, but where do you think he kind of faltered in Columbus? Because that's the only GM job he's held. He's only had that one GM position.
Right. Well, um, I think it was just time. They'd only make the
Yeah.
playoffs. I think. I want to say out of 13 years, I think they only made the playoffs a couple times. But when they made the playoffs, they
No,
were
I
impactful.
think it was I think they had 5 playoff appearances. I want to
Five.
say.
Okay. So 5 and 13. It's 5 and 12. 5 and 12 years. So like less than half the time they're in
Yeah.
the playoffs. But
Yeah.
like I said, Columbus, small market. Who wants to live in Columbus? Same as Buffalo. Like who wants to live here? Um, but I
Yeah, he had
guess
last made the playoffs in the 2019-2020 season.
yeah.
So
So it was
if
it
you
was a
go a
while.
few years, yeah, only Kevin Adams is a GM who can miss the playoffs for like 10 straight years and still have a job.
Yeah, other organizations have standards. But he did build some
But
fun teams, man. I mean, he built like he traded for he made the Seth Jones trade. Like they drafted Zach Werenski fifth overall, and he's incredible. Like they had some good players. They traded for Panarin, I believe. Yeah, because he was in Chicago, and they traded Sod for Panarin back in the day. Like, dude, they made some good moves with him at the helm.
I need him to help Adams with the free agent stuff. That
Yep.
is where Adams has swung and missed because he has made some good trades, and from what we've seen, and he could very well. be gun shy. Like that's kind of been thrown around there in the past too. We've talked about that on the podcast here too. And so if Adams has made some of these good trades, and if he's lost some trades that he just was afraid to kind of pull the deal on, like you mentioned, maybe Kekalainen can help him with that, just given his experience. But if he can help him, so if he can help him there a little bit more, and then just give him a little bit more, whatever, go get itness, to get some of these free agent guys, or be able to attract some of these other free agent guys to Buffalo, knowing that they have somebody else that's there that wants to win, has done it before. It seems like that's a big area that's missing. Like the trade piece is kind of there for Adams. The free agent piece has really not been there. I mean, his
Right.
biggest free agent addition has been like Jason Zucker. Like
Right.
that's kind of like his biggest hit there, and that worked for a year. We'll see what happens next year and the following year. With Zucker, we want him to work out, but you got an aging player, so who really knows? Um, so hopefully he can help with the free agency, and development is something that it maybe is not something that he'll have as much influence on, but that's obviously another area that the organization has to improve on as well.
So this is another thing that I'm kind of excited about bringing in Yarmo is the relationships aspect. Like, Adams, Brant, he's been in the league for 5 years now, but other than that, like, besides being a player and an assistant coach for the Sabres, 10 years ago, he really had no relationships, and I feel like
Right.
relationships is a huge part of being a GM. Jarmo Kekalainen has been in the NHL in some capacity since 1995. I have his profile pulled up right now. In the 90s, he was a European scout for Ottawa, and then he transferred over to the director of player personnel for a couple years, transitioning into the 2000s. From 2003 to 2010, he was the director of player personnel, director of amateur scouting, and assistant GM for the Blues. And the Blues had some awesome drafts back then. Like in the mid 2000s, they were one of my favorite teams. They drafted David Backus, they drafted TJ Oshie, they drafted a couple other guys I really liked even back then. And then he got his first shot as an NHL GM in 2013 with Columbus. So this guy's been around the block for a long time.
Is there maybe you know the answer to this question, maybe you don't. Is there a style of play that he likes more that you've noticed from like the Blue Jackets teams throughout the years? Or maybe I'm just trying to think of like maybe players now that as we get into the off season and we start maybe talking more about like guys that we could move, or if we're going to change up systems or whatnot. Like, do you think he's going to want to test his hand at that at all and influence that at all from a roster build, or just kind of let Lindy and Seth kind of make some of the make some more of the calls there?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a little bit more of a collaborative effort there. Like, I don't think that he's going to be in here calling the shots and be like, "We're playing this way." But I will. I do think he's going to use his reach to, maybe suggest a free agent or two, or suggest a guy on the market that they should trade for. Like,
Yeah,
he's
because the
going to be in
Sabres kind
Kevin's
of
ear.
need like because they've kind of built up all this skill and talent,
Yep.
and they've missed the bucket on some of what Lindy has historically wanted from like some of the brawn or some of the grit, and toughness and mental toughness, things
Well,
like
like
that. So
like last
um,
year's awful fourth line when we were all so excited about Abe Kubel and Lafferty, and that didn't go so well, huh?
but that's what I mean. Like, and Lindy was here for that, So
Yep.
at the end of the day, maybe last year, if Lindy was like, maybe that's all they could get done. But if Lindy had a hand in that, well, maybe that's where Yarmo last year could have stepped in and been like, I see where you're going with here, but maybe let's go with these guys. So hopefully that collaboration is all good. But yeah, that fourth line, man,
It wasn't very
did
fun,
not it did not work out very much. But
but
um,
I'm
all
excited
right, cool.
overall. It's gonna be it's just nice to feel respected again. Like, it's so funny. So I got is this this came out not even like 5 minutes after I finished listening to 32 Thoughts this morning,
Yeah.
and it's been weeks since Elliot like made the mention of like a senior advisor for the Sabres. Like I want to say he mentioned it
Yeah.
like I want to say at least 3 Mondays ago, like maybe even a month ago. So he's got they do 2 episodes a week, and episodes go by, and I'm like, damn, there's no Sabres talk. Like another episode goes by, doesn't bring up the Sabres at all. Like in there around the league set, I'm like, dude, this is the most plugged in guy in hockey, and we have no Sabres talk today. No Sabres talk whatsoever. Not, and then 5 minutes later, it's announced that we signed Jarmo Kekalainen, or like brought him
So you
on
think
to the
he
front
knew when he
office.
first mentioned it a few weeks ago?
Definitely knew that we were sniffing around. I mean, at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Islanders were hiring a GM. The Kings hired Ken Holland. I'm sure he interviewed with us for the same role, but he got a GM job, so you know he's going to take that 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
NHL circles knew we were sniffing around for this, but I was skeptical, and I am happy that we're going to get a Sabres segment in 32 Thoughts on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, with Kekalainen and things. Do you think, and we can move on after this because there's a couple other things we want to talk about tonight, but do you think that there'll be anything else coming, as far as staff goes, or
I
coaching?
do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it was Mike
Like what?
Harrington today that said that they're not done in the front office, and they are adding
Mm-hmm.
another person to the strength and conditioning staff. On top of
Mm-hmm.
I forget his name that we did just bring on. So it looks to me like we're gonna try operating as a serious NHL organization this summer, and that should be exciting for all Sabres fans.
Well, Matt Fairburn brought up a good point a few weeks ago on the Baker Fairburn show, and comparing, um, Brandon Bean and when he was brought on versus Kevin Adams when he was brought on, and how Kevin Adams was promoted to the guy, and he didn't have a lot around him.
Yep.
And Bean came on and immediately, whether it was his decision, I'm sure it was his decision, or the organization's, but surrounded himself with the right people, that could, and the Sabres didn't really do that, and whether that was from Adams for, as Matt mentioned, like, he didn't want a competitor, there, or he just didn't know, either or, but that's what Bean did right away. And you surround yourself with
Dude, they
successful
still
people,
do.
then you're going to be more successful. So hopefully that's
Yeah.
what they're finally realizing, after 5 years.
Dude, the Bills point is such a great point because so specifically to Brandon Bean himself and Sean McDermott, his first offensive coordinator was Rick Dennison, who was in the league for like 25 years. Like even Sean McDermott gave himself
Yeah.
like a buffer in the beginning. Brandon Bean, so Brian Gain, who is currently one of is on Brandon Bean's staff as like an assistant GM. He left a couple years ago to be the GM of the Texans, got fired, and now got brought back. So like a guy
Mm-hmm.
that already was a GM for a short period of time gets brought back to be in the Bills organization. That just goes to show how like secure Brandon Bean is as a GM.
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh
wants
yeah.
to work with
Yeah.
all the best people, like the smartest minds, and like collaborate like that. And I
Mm-hmm.
do think Kevin Adams might be like a little bit insecure. Like you said, didn't want any competition. Like this is an NHL franchise. You want all hands on deck, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
no experience is bad experience. So a little bit of hubris too on Adams' part, thinking like he can do it. And here we are 5 years
Yeah.
later, and we're unhappy, and the fans are as dissatisfied as ever.
Yeah. Yeah, and you gotta wonder if, like, if he wasn't allowed to bring people on because Terry didn't want extra salary. Like, who knows? It probably was a little bit of both. But
Right.
if they're going to turn this thing around and head in the right direction, and it's got to start at the front office, and this is a good step in the right direction. Let's switch before we get into NHL playoffs. Let's talk Amerks, because the Amerks finished out the season, and 4 games, so they lose in the second round to Laval Rocket. And just what do you think about the Amerks year and players who impressed you, or where you think they're kind of heading in the future? Just give me some thoughts there.
Amerks were so fun this year. I mean, I really like Michael Leone as a coach. Part of me feels like they're
Hmm.
grooming the wrong
He gives
guy.
some good interviews.
Yeah, part of me feels like that the Sabres are grooming the wrong guy to be the next head coach because we all know like Seth Appert is king in this town now. But I really like Michael Leone a lot as a coach, so they have one thing really going down there in Rochester. But a lot of their guys had up and down
Do you think
seasons.
Seth's record would have been different if he was there instead of Leone?
Probably
It's like
similar, I would
the
say.
success can make that feel like that, but it's also like, if Seth was there, would it be the same? I mean, we all hate Seth right now because the power play sucks and all that stuff, but I'm just wondering, like, because like Rochester has good teams, so it's what I feel like with
Always.
coaches, it's so hard, because
I know.
but I do I your point still sticks because I do like when I listen to him, I like what he says, and he seems to have a good hockey head on his shoulders and things. So yeah, I was
Yeah,
just
I mean,
curious.
a lot of guys developed okay, and a lot of guys, the playoffs, man, the playoffs really show you who you are, in my opinion. And a lot of the guys that we're relying on to be future contributors for the Sabres, like, were really underwhelming, especially against Laval. Like, I didn't notice Wahlberg. Rosen,
Stock is down on
out.
Wahlberg.
I'm out on
Rosen didn't
Roseanne.
have a
They need to
bad playoffs, but
move him
but
for
they need to
something.
move him. Yeah, yeah,
Kulik was
yeah.
good, but he's an
Hellenius
NHL.
stock is up,
Hellenius
but
stock is
Hellenius
up,
stock is up.
dude. Oh,
Hmm.
Hellenius, man. I would trade Oslin before I would
Consta.
trade Hellenius at this point because as
Yeah,
much as I
yeah, for
like
sure.
Oslin, Hellenius, I had no idea this was in his game, but watching him in these playoffs, that guy is such an asshole. That guy is such a prick.
I knew it was
Imagine,
coming.
imagine him and Benson on a line together, like in the
Oh my
future,
gosh, I
just
love it.
causing
I
chaos.
love it.
Like, and he's
Yeah,
such a good like all around guy. Like, he's probably never gonna be more than like Ryan McLeod type, like third line center that can play, up the lineup if need be. But for an
yeah,
18-year
it's
old
fine.
kid to come in, I think he did really well. Like, I liked him, and to have the confidence to start talking shit to everyone, like at any point in time, and get your glove in people's faces and get your stick in places where it hurts. I like that. I like that. So the Hellenius
Yeah,
stock
he
is definitely
started
up.
peaking towards the end of the season. He had like five goals in like 5 games towards the end of the season, and then he had a nice playoff run too, and put up some nice point totals in the playoffs. So he'll be a big part of that team next year as well. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think Roseanne in the playoffs necessarily did anything to like up his stock or hurt his stock, but I think he's a guy that has had his chances with the Sabres, and it just hasn't really been there when he's had his call ups. And I'm totally fine with them, moving from him. Kulik's obviously an NHLer. Wahlberg, didn't seem to do too much. We got to have the Levi conversation though,
Oh
because I
no.
think my thought with Levi is, and Adams said this as much in his year end press conference. He basically said that how Levi performs in the AHL playoffs will be a big factor in what happens next year, and that they have the talent to go on a run, and they did. Levi did not have a strong AHL playoffs, at least in the second round. The first round was good. He had a couple shutouts, and
Yep.
you were thinking, oh, this could really be it. But he struggled mightily in the second round. And Laval is a good team. It might, they won the whatever. I don't even know what's the trophy for the
Calder
President's
Cup.
Cup. Like, in
Oh, the president, like with the best record. I'm unsure.
yeah, because yeah, so but they had the best record in the AHL this year. So they played a true heavyweight in the second round. But some of the mistakes that we saw, or not mistakes, but inconsistencies that we saw with the against Laval is what we saw with when he's up with the Sabres, poor rebound control and things like that. So with Adams saying this is going to be part of the evaluation, you feel like he maybe took a step back there, uh, and
Right.
and now it might be really up to him to show in preseason that he's ready, and that's going to be his next opportunity to do so. But even if you're the Sabres, you have to think you can't necessarily rely on him to be ready, so you might have to go get a guy this offseason.
Yeah, I'm already like I'm you know me. I'm off the Levi train. He needs another year in the minors, like if they do end up keeping him. But
Would you
he
rather see
just
him move him or keep him another
well
year?
that
Because he's
depends.
going to
Like
be, I think, an RFA after one more year.
yes, so he's gonna
It's
need
not like he's
another
going to
deal.
command a
He's
big
not gonna get a
contract
lot of
then.
money. Right. He's not gonna get a lot of money. I I just I don't know. Goalies are weird to me. Like if you can get like true value for a goalie, I think you kind of got to do it. But I don't think like I think that ship is kind of sailed right now because of his body of work in the NHL. Like until he proves it in the NHL, I don't think he's gonna have much value outside of our organization.
You don't think so? Even like with his good AHL numbers and like he's still got to have
Yeah.
some trade value. It
Well,
took a
because
hit,
even
but
like
if they wanted to move, but then it's like you probably would just hold him, like you're
just
saying.
yeah, just like I think at this point, just let him develop another year, and maybe at the end of the year next year, if he earns it or there's injuries, then you give him a couple NHL games. I mean, not if we're a playoff team, obviously, but at some point in his career, he's going to have to show that he can, stop NHL shooters. But if he's just like so unbelievable in the AHL, especially like he needs to have a playoff year. That's ridiculous. The NHL's like he
Yeah,
can't be like the AHL's Hellebuck because that doesn't work, man.
yeah. He's an RFA this year, by the way. Like he's an
Oh,
RFA
it's
right
this.
now.
He needs a new deal now. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I've as long as if I'm
He'll
reading
get a 2 year deal.
Puckpedia correctly, yeah, it says 2025, 2026 RFA. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
because
he'll
yeah, but he's not. It's gonna be nothing, Well,
no,
so
he'll get 1 or 2 year deal.
yeah. Yeah, so
But
that'll be interesting. I think that's probably as far as like the Amerks and the Sabres go, that's probably their biggest decision right now. A lot of they'll return a lot of the players from last year. They got some nice contributions from Kozak during the year, and I like what Kozak brought in his few instances. So he's a guy I'll be looking for. As the fall time comes around and we kind of get some of these guys on the ice and kind of see what happens there. But other than that, overall, nice year from the Amerks. A little bit of a disappointing finish, but you would imagine they'll be right back there next year with another opportunity.
yeah, especially so like Jason Carmanos, there was a little rumblings that he might be leaving the organization, and he is as the assistant GM, he's also the Amerks GM, and every year he assembles a good team around the young players. So I'm assuming, like you said, that Rochester's going to be good and a playoff team again next year because they got a lot of pieces. Even though they're losing Kulik, they might lose Roseanne in a trade. Like who knows what they do this summer, but
Hmm.
they'll always build a good team. That's like a
Yeah,
priority for this organization.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And my boy Ryan Johnson's going to be up with the Sabres next year,
Oh
so
yeah,
it
we
looks
didn't even
cool.
talk about Ryan Johnson, dude. I'm
Yeah,
not
Johnson was
kidding.
good.
I'd give him NHL games. He was that good.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, Johnson
I
was
might
good.
have I might have like completely turned my opinion on him. Like I don't think he's ever going to be like a top four guy. Like he's not supplanting, Power or Darlene, but
Yeah,
he can give you a nice shift on the third pair. Like maybe if they
yeah. At
don't
this point, I'd
if they
rather have him over Bryson or Sammy.
yeah, if they end up moving Samuelson, um and they get, move Byram and they get two new partners for Darlene and Power, I wouldn't mind a third pair of Ryan Johnson and JBD.
Yeah, yes, we'll see what happens. I mean, yeah, JBD didn't, wasn't awful in his, outings here, and yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, Ryan Johnson looks solid, looks steady, during the run there. So it'll be interesting to see what some of these young kids do come the fall time. Let's get into the NHL playoffs here now because we got our final set, and we got a rematch. We got a rematch between the Oil and the Panthers. So what are you expecting to see? Or well, before we do there, what has been your takeaways from the first few rounds there? Any big surprises or anything you want to talk about?
Wasn't it so awesome to see the Leafs lose?
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. I would kind of wanted the Leafs to beat the Panthers, or not. Oh yeah. I would have loved to
Well,
see the Leafs beat the Panthers.
it would have been a
As
nice
much as
story.
I hate Toronto, like I kind of like a lot of their players, like Willie Nylander, Mitch Marner, like Matthews. Like I kind of like these guys. So and I mean I was big on the Leafs this year. I remember in our offseason preview I was talking about how I liked the couple moves they made to like improve their D and things, and they were getting good goaltending. When you watch what happened in that series versus Carolina, it's like, man, like Florida was always going to get there unless Toronto probably knocked them out.
Yeah,
Because also,
dude.
like, how overrated was Washington? Looking at what Carolina did to Washington, so it was going to be it was going to be Florida or Toronto, all the
Dude,
way. Once you have seen how things played out.
if if Toronto wasn't so polarizing, and like Marner wasn't going to be done with them, like he's hitting free agency 100%. Like the
Yeah,
quotes
for
coming
sure.
out from his camp about how he's disrespected and wants a chance to, and like Brad Tree Living, the GM, said like it's up to him whether he wants to come back or not. Like, dude, he's gone. And
No,
Tavares is a
yeah,
UFA. Are they going to be able to sign him? Uh, but other than those two like major pieces, I feel like if you're a Toronto fan, you're feeling pretty good about the season your team had because they were the
yeah,
only
for
ones to
sure.
push Florida to the brink.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of those things where it's like when you see everybody else, like again, comparing what Washington did to against Carolina, and then what Carolina, how they flopped against the Panthers there. It's like, well, yeah, you had a chance. I mean, they had a chance. They pushed them to game 7, but dude, that
Right.
game 7, oh my god, that was ugly, dude.
Oh, dude, they laid an egg
They
bad.
yeah, they didn't even show up. We should talk about that. Like that game was we were both so hyped for that game. We were actually going to record that night, remember? And then we were
Yep.
like, no, we're not recording. It's game 7 tonight. And then
The,
that was
the game was
brutal.
suddenly over like halfway through the second period.
I can't even, and you're at home, and after what they had done in game 5 too, getting
Yep.
booed off the ice, and then you to do that in back-to-back games, and then in game 7. But it just shows you the difference there in mindset, because you hear all the quotes coming out of
Oh,
Florida, where
dude.
they come to training camp and they're talking about how are you getting ready to, like, now for like what a game 7 would be like. It's just like the standard in that organization right now is just second to none.
Well, it was so funny because there was that clip of Marner like screaming at the bench, and that got like memed because he's public enemy number one. And then Matthews came out and said they
Screaming at
had
the
two.
Toronto bench.
Yeah, yeah. And then Matthews came out and said they had too many passengers, and Matthews himself
Yeah, I heard
was,
that.
garbage in the playoffs. So it's like, dude, like you can't really call out everyone else when you
He
kind of
didn't
had the
contribute
playoffs you did.
offensively,
So
really.
no, that organization,
He
they're
didn't.
so funny. They're so funny. I just love them.
Was he hurt this year, Matthews? Because he did
Yeah,
not have.
definitely. But he's hurt every year. I feel like the excuse for him is that he's hurt
I
every
know,
year.
but he didn't miss a lot of games this year. I feel like he still played a ton of games, but his production was way down, and he was probably playing injured, like you said. But I'm just curious to see. Yeah, so
And
I mean,
what
he had
about the
33 goals this year.
yeah? Like
33 goals, 78 points. That's not bad, but
still obviously an elite player, but like in the playoffs, he was just a shell of himself. What about the West? Are we happy with a Stanley
well,
Cup final rematch?
we gotta talk about the Pete DeBoer quote
Oh, from
with Jake
last night
Ottinger.
or from 2 nights ago?
Yeah,
Oh my
we
god,
gotta talk about that, because I'm
dude!
disappointed with the way that the West shook out, because so Kings Oilers was pretty cool. Like that was a good series, and the poor Kings, man, they just can't get past the Oilers. It looked promising. They went up 2-0,
Yeah,
and then the
that
Oilers
game
just
three, that game
stormed
three
back.
was a complete turning point.
Yeah, that was like that, but that was a good series, and then seeing Edmonton, knock out Vegas, and I think 5 games, right? Like
Yep.
anytime you see Jack get eliminated, that's always good. And then, you know, uh, McDavid torched him a couple times, so that's got to feel so good for McDavid. Um, Winnipeg, a little bit of a disappointing, end to their season. You had the whole roller coaster that was Connor Hellebuck throughout the playoffs, and shout out to Mark Scheifele for that game is just a roller coaster for him. I know, of just losing your dad before you score the first goal in the game, and then you take a penalty at the end, and it's just sports and the dramatics. But Winnipeg is heading in the right direction. So the West has had a lot of stuff going on. Every series there has had its own storylines and things, and I've been rooting for Dallas. I was a Dallas fan last year, and I was rooting for them this year too. And then you had what happened in this series here. But yeah, there's been some things going on. The West has been the West hockey has probably been a little bit better than the Eastern hockey as far as from a competitive nature, right? But
Definitely.
what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean the East. I feel like the East has teams that are just boring in general. Anyway, like as much as I respect Florida, they still play like a cheap game. Carolina was just boring. Toronto was boring this year. Uh, Washington. Everyone knew they were frauds. But then you get to the West, and it's like, all right, Vegas was good. Dallas was high flying. Winnipeg was the best
Colorado,
team in the league. Colorado. So the West
yeah,
is definitely where it's at right now in terms of like entertainment value.
for sure.
But with
You
all
have
that said,
Rantanen over in Dallas now. I mean, oh
yeah,
my god.
and he was on fire in the like
Oh yeah, he
against
put
Colorado.
away. Yeah,
He had
yeah,
what, like 16 points in the series
yeah.
against Colorado. Like he was insane.
The West has been great. Every series has been good. Yeah,
So last night, Edmonton wraps it up against Dallas, and Ottinger didn't come out. He didn't get off the bus. Basically, like he was very bad on the first two goals. Like
I missed those first two goals. Were they bad? Were they bad
yes,
goals or okay?
yes. So Pete DeBoer. The story is crazy, and I've heard this, told two different ways today, from listening to various podcasts. But essentially, if you didn't see it, DeBoer calls timeout. They do their little talk. Ottinger starts skating back to the crease, and DeBoer says, and you can see it actually. Someone had camera view of it, and he said, "Get the fuck back over here. You're out." Puts in DeSmith, I think, came in, and first shot on him goes in. It's like, dude, what was the point of that? Not only is it embarrassing to get pulled in an elimination game like that, uh, as Jake Ottinger, your contract kicks in next year, 8.25 million per year. Your coach
Worth every penny though.
completely is
He's
set.
worth every penny, in
He's
my
great.
opinion.
He's
I'm a
great.
big Andre
I
fan.
would I would love the Sabres to somehow trade for him.
Yeah,
Um, your coach backs the bus over you and basically says it wasn't all Jake's fault, but he did suck and he can't beat Edmonton. Like, dude, I can't believe he said that. He
yikes.
said, "Well, if you noticed, Jake has lost 6 of 7 series against Edmonton, or six of
Six to
seven
seven
games."
games. Yeah,
And it's like, Jake didn't lose those games. Your team lost those games. Like
yeah.
that's the Dallas Stars. So he just backed it over him. Like, damn, I'd be so pissed if I was Jake Onger.
Especially because Dallas was not good in that series. Like there's a lot of stuff that probably went in here. Like for him to say that, because I like Pete DeBoer as a coach a lot, but I think that if he felt comfortable saying that, then he must have known like Ottinger mentally wasn't ready going into that game, or he did something to piss him off, where like he felt like he needed to put him on blast. I still don't like the way that he did it. Like if you're gonna come at a guy after you're already like there's so much emotion in that moment. If you're gonna if you're gonna put a guy on blast, like you do it behind closed doors, and then that player also will have respect for you. Like you would want that. Like some of my best coaches growing up, they are the coaches that are tough on you. So if he had to tell him like, hey, yeah, we kind of lost because of you, like you played like shit, like whatever, like say that man to man, but you can't do it in the face of the media because it's gonna blow up like wildfire. So now now this is going to be a story, because
Yep.
it sure probably pissed Ottinger off, and time heals all, I guess. So you see what happens, but you could if you fast forward a year and it's Dallas and Edmonton, this is going to come back up. Like, it's going to
Yeah.
be a thing again, especially if Ottinger plays game one and it's not good. Like, you just set yourself up for potential future. Like,
Yeah.
there's just a
Yeah.
lot of wrinkles to this whole thing now,
Yeah, yeah. For all the all the credit that Peter DeBoer gets for being like Mr. Game 7 and like winning Game 7s all the time, like you can see why he only lasts like a couple years at his stops. Like he's a great coach, but it
Yeah.
just wears thin after a while.
Yeah. Yeah, tough to see Dallas go out like that. They did not play a competitive series, and I didn't think that they were that far off from Edmonton as far as just like a skill gap or talent
Right.
on the ice. Like, I actually, like, in my opinion, they're fairly close. I know, obviously Edmonton has the best player in the world, and they got McDavid and Draisaitl and some role players and things, but I thought Dallas could push that series to 7 games, if not even take it. And a lot of people did too after their first couple rounds. And what they did, in those first couple rounds.
Right.
But yeah, it just wasn't in the cards for them, and now they got this little, extra little bit of tension, afterwards to deal with this offseason. So we'll see what happens there, if there's any fallout from that, or they just run it back next year. But they'll have some decisions to make this offseason too as well. What are you thinking what's going to happen in the Stanley Cup final here?
As much as I'd like to see Edmonton, I'm not picking against Florida. Like it's that easy for me.
Yeah, just going back to
Bob's on
back.
fire. Bob's on fire. The team's just too deep. Barkov's game is really stepped up here. He's been incredible. And I just, as much as I want to see Edmonton and McDavid, Draisaitl, and Corey Perry even lift a cup, considering he's been in the last like 5 finals in a row and
Yeah,
hasn't won a cup. Like, damn, that's crazy. But
that is crazy.
I think I want to pick Florida.
You're picking Florida. Game one is Wednesday night, so the boys
Yep.
got a few days off here, rest up, and get ready. It's going to be a hell of a series. So last year, Florida started 3-0, and then in the series, and then Edmonton won the next three, and then Florida
Yep.
won the seventh game back at home. I think Florida had home ice
Florida had
advantage
home
last year
ice.
though, which is so, and the Oils should this year.
Yes.
So
So I'm thinking 7 though. I'm thinking 7.
Oil,
It's
the
going
oil,
7.
by the way, is so fun to say.
It
Like, when I
is.
say the oil, I feel like it's kind of badass. Like, you started saying that to me like in the text. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool to just say like the oil. But I'm picking the oil, man. I am. I'm gonna take the Oilers.
It would be cool. I'd be happy, but I mean I'm just hoping for an entertaining series, and we know we'll get one.
It's gonna be an entertaining series for sure. I'm just taking Connor McDavid. I think he's finally gonna do it. He's the best player in the world. He's been playing great. He looks like a man on a mission, So, and I think Florida's playing a little banged up. Kachuk looks healthier, but he's still a little banged up. But it's gonna be a great series for sure. All right, man. I hear a little one crying there. Does that mean
You can hear him?
our
Oh
time?
no,
I
you can hear him.
yeah, I just
I,
no,
I think it
I
might have.
just heard
I,
Mr. Quinn.
yeah, I think I might have to wrap it up and help my wife out a little bit.
Hey, that's fine. He held out pretty good. He held out pretty
He did.
good.
He did. He
Yeah.
gives us like one bad night and then one good night. So this might be a bad one.
Well, hopefully. Well, we'll see.
But
Hopefully he
dude,
just needs his
it was
dad
it was
to settle him back
it
down.
was yeah. So it was nice to get back on and record. But like as you guys can see, if you're watching the
Yeah.
video podcast, I'm not like at my normal seat. My basement is a mess. There's baby shit everywhere. Not actual shit, but like you know, baby stuff just is taking up my floor. But uh, yeah, it was nice to record, and I missed you guys, and I missed talking to you guys.
Yeah, quick disclaimer before we sign off. We're going to try and get episodes out to you guys as frequently as we can, but it might be a little bit more sporadic here over the off season, just as, life kind of slows down for both of us. So if you're tuned in and subscribed to the show, stay subscribed, because we will get shows out to you, when we can, and as consistently as we can. But you might just find that it's a little bit more sporadic to the feed going forward. But that'll do it for tonight. Ryan, always nice to get back on with you. And as always, Stay safe in the Sabrehood, Sabres fans, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Later.
Bye.